Alex, good morning, sir, and welcome to your gym.
Yeah, good morning and welcome to my garage.
Our audience will be happy to know that Alex and I just tied at table tennis 5-5 after a very, very competitive match this morning.
I would say you called it very competitive. I was chill. It's chill. We're just warming up. We're having a good time.
Not true. This was an absolute drag out, sick match. Thanks for the game this morning. That was pretty fun. Alex, before we drop into it, tell us what's new. What have you been up to since I saw you last at the Regenerative Energy? Just kidding. We call it RE+, the big solar show, and I think that was the last time we saw each other.
Yeah, I was like, what have we done since then? Basically just living family life. I went to Yosemite for a month with the family of 4 in the van. It was the first time with a little baby. It was a lot, but worked, and basically just been working on climbing projects.
Awesome. How was Yosemite?
Yeah, it was good. I didn't quite do the thing I was trying to do, but we had a good time. Family was good. It was, it was a great trip. I'm just like, climbing with 2 babies in a van is tough.
Now, when you go back there, does it feel more crowded these days?
Not to me. I mean, and also I went late season for free climbing. Basically for good climbing conditions, it's nice to go late when it's kind of cold. And it's just not that touristy by then. Yep. And then also when you spend all your time on the side of the wall and like on things, there aren't that many tourists on the side of El Cap. It's like pretty chill in Yosemite.
Yeah, I remember that from my days hanging out there. I always say, as soon as you get off the road there,
yeah, exactly.
Things get a lot more interesting.
As soon as you get on trails or onto cliffs or whatever, it's like pretty, it's wilderness.
That's awesome. Well, welcome home.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome back. Today we want to talk a little bit about REC and Honnold Foundation. We've had a hell of a run over the last 5-6 years together. What has it been? Is it something like this?
Something like 5 or 6 years probably. We met in Detroit, right?
Our first project was our Honnold Detroit project. Well, tell us a little bit about that one.
I mean, yeah.
Or maybe I'll tell you about it.
Yeah, you tell me. It's like, well, we're just putting panels on houses.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was our first project together. We sort of got acquainted, and then Dory Trimble, your initial...
Yeah, the previous executive director
sort of staged that. We went to Detroit, and that's right when REC was launching our new product, our Alpha series in the U.S. market. I remember that well. And
because it was like the nicest panels on.
Right, it was
on like the most dilapidated house.
That's right. The nicest stuff on the worst homes in Detroit.
But that is kind of the whole point, and that's really what the Honnold Foundation is trying to do: is the people that need it the most get the best that they,
Yeah.
Like you get the best product on the people who need it.
Yeah. So I recall we were running around on some roofs. I think we installed 10 or 20, like 3 or 4 kW systems on 20 different homes. Those people were pretty damn stoked for that. And that was kind of where we let off. We made a movie about it with, I think your buddies.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
That's out there on YouTube.
Duct Tape and Beer?
Duct Tape and Beer, yeah.
That's funny because that's before I started, because now I co-host Climbing Gold, like a podcast that I do with them. But that was like way before. I mean, that does feel like a long time ago.
It is a long time ago, man. That's before you had kids.
Yeah. So exactly. I remember nothing from before. Haven't slept in 2 years. And
Welcome to the team. I know how that looks. Yeah. So that was first. And then what happened from there? We did, REC has been donating money and time and modules to Honnold Foundation every year for the last, 5-6 years. What was the other big project we did after that? We did more recently, we did a pretty fun event in my place at Grey Rocks in my backyard.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what other projects. What have you guys donated panels to? I'm trying to. I can't remember.
Several different projects at I know with Henry Red Cloud and the Red Cloud Renewable crew.
Okay.
Up in Pine Ridge. I think Red Lake also.
Okay.
Another Native American tribe, and then of course the Puerto Rico project.
Yeah, are those REC panels?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's the thing is that the Honnold Foundation has so many different partners now. And, we've supported so many projects around the world. It's like hard to remember which project uses which panel. Like, because really we source from anybody who's willing, or whatever's cheapest. Because ultimately it comes down to whatever helps the community the most.
As that's the Ajuntas project, I think it's called.
Ajuntas, yeah.
Ajuntas, yeah. I'm not very good at Spanish.
Yeah, Spanish, come on. Yeah. No, that was a classic. I mean, that was kind of the first big sort of ambitious undertaking we did. It's the first cooperative solar microgrid in Puerto Rico. It's the first of its kind. And honestly, going to that community and seeing the way the project laid out, I mean, it was a very traditional sort of not quite village, but kind of small town, sort of European feeling, but all based around a city square, like a center, like a town square. But so basically panels went on all the businesses in the center and then back to the batteries. And it just felt really like the core of the city is going solar, and it's all sort of cooperative, going back into the community. It's like the way things should be. You're sort of like, why is this not the norm?
Right. Yeah, that was cool.
Particularly in Puerto Rico, which was so affected by hurricanes. It's like after, was it Hurricane Maria?
I think, the place got wiped out by a hurricane, and then we were going to go down there after the panels and batteries, and it was a big sort of microgrid project there. And then another hurricane came in and blasted the place again, and I think that's why we didn't go. I can't remember. Have you been there?
I went there once for they did like a solar day parade thing. I forget what it was, but it was like it was a whole crazy like event around it. Casa Pueblo, the community organization that's organized the whole thing and like made it happen there. And they've been sort of big environmental, like they've been champions of the community for many, many years. But, we just kind of went at their invitation to see the project come to life. And it was like, wow, this is amazing.
That's cool. That's awesome. So yeah. And then we did a fun event at my place in my backyard. I call it Gray Rocks, my little music venue at my house. And we had some sort of interesting cast of characters at that one.
Yeah.
That was super cool. And then we messed around in the Flatirons, I think, the next day. And
yeah, totally. We climbed the second.
I think we climbed the second. Yeah, we had a kind of a small group. And then this year at RE+, I guess, was your first exposure to the big solar show. We gave a talk on the Master Speaker Series. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, going to RE+, I was like, this is a lot more of a thing than I would have expected. Yeah. It's just so big. It's so many people, and like it's like a real trade show.
Tell us, like, what does that look like? I mean,
it's just a lot. I mean, it's just much bigger. I think there's a popular perception of renewable still kind of being like fringe, and you go to something like that and you're like, I don't know if this is fringe anymore. This feels like pretty mainstream. Like this is big. There's like a lot of people and a lot of business and just a lot happening, a lot of booths, like just, Yeah. I mean, I haven't been to that many different trade shows in my life, but certainly compared to the outdoor industry trade shows, RE+ is like a whole different order of magnitude. It was big.
Yeah, it's fun. Like the solar industry is funny like that because I started in 2005 and it was still wheat growers and off-grid systems in California.
Yeah, that's fringe.
It was fringe. Yeah, that's where it came from.
Now it's big business. It definitely didn't have that vibe.
100%. 100% agree.
But it's interesting because it's big business, but it still doesn't feel like going to a banking conference or something. I mean, that was kind of what I thought was interesting about going to RE+ was that I was like, these are my people. I was like, oh, this is exactly like who I would associate with normally. Because I've spoken at a lot of other, like tech conferences and like finance conferences, like random things, just going to talk about rock climbing and whatever. I hate to say motivational speaking, but just like giving a talk. And a lot of the time you go to like a banking conference and I'm like, I don't know if these are my people, And RE+ I was kind of like, this, like this does not feel that far off from like how I hang out normally, right. But just slightly different industry.
One of the things you told me that always stuck with me, Alex, was that we had a party at not this past RE+, but I think it was a couple of years ago. And we were hanging out at the end, sort of in the back in a quiet moment. And you said something to the effect of, if I wasn't a professional climber, I would probably be a lot like you guys. I'd probably be working in the solar industry.
Yeah, I probably would have wound up on the same path, totally.
Yeah.
I started the Honnold Foundation because this seemed like the most important thing to be supporting. I was like, if I'm going to try to do something useful other than rock climbing, which is arguably not that useful, but incredibly enjoyable
but and really
fun. Yeah, exactly. Really great and love it. But, arguably not that useful. I was like, to me, solar seems like the future. This is the obvious, like solar is the way. And so it's like, yeah, if I hadn't been lucky enough to be a professional climber, pretty good odds that I would have wound up working in solar in some way or something. Just because it seems like so obviously correct to me. I'm like, this is where I go.
So you had the vision for Honnold Foundation long before, you were still in your van and you were still long before you were the Alex Honnold, if you will.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I founded the Honnold Foundation, I think in 2012. And so I was a professional climber at that point and had been in like some climbing films and been on some magazines and things like that. But I was just a dude living in my van. I was like single, living in a little white box, like sort of wondering what I was doing with my life. I was obviously very driven with climbing and trying my hardest and doing the best I could and all that. But you're also kind of like, man, I live alone in a van and I have for the last decade. You're like, like, what am I doing?
Sounds great, man. Sounds great.
Yeah. Particularly now with the family scene, sometimes I'm like, it is really simple when you're just by yourself in a car. But that's just not something you want to do for your entire life. It's something that's like amazing for a portion of your life as you're sort of like pursuing a certain type of passion, but you're like, you wouldn't want to be doing that when you're 70. You'd be like, this is a little bit lonely.
So how did the origin story, or how did the motivation to start Honnold Foundation come?
Well, I think the motivation was just this general desire to do something useful. And so kind of at the same time, I did a couple other sort of personal actions in life. Like, I went mostly vegetarian because I was kind of like, I can sort of lower my personal environmental footprint, things like that. And so I looked into that. And then actually when I looked into carbon offsets a bit, I was kind of like, it seems like maybe better just to support the most meaningful projects directly rather than, setting aside the whole conversation of carbon offsets because like good or bad, whatever. But there certainly are some good types of projects. But I was kind of like, well, you may as well fund those good projects directly. And then I was kind of looking at, philanthropic work of some kind. I was kind of like, really, I should just be funding projects that I think are the most significant. And then I was looking for projects that benefit the environment and people, and was kind of like, it just always came back to solar. I don't know. To me, just solar is so often such an elegant solution to so many different, both environmental or societal problems, like energy access problems. And I traveled a lot on climate expeditions, traveled to a lot of the more remote parts of the world. There's something almost like 1 billion people on Earth that don't have access to energy. And I'd sort of seen that firsthand in a lot of parts of the world. And I'd kind of come, I don't know if this is like backed by any kind of real science, but personally, I'd kind of come to realize that, or at least think that most communities have some way of taking care of their basic needs. Like they have food, they have water, but basically energy access to me felt like the base of sort of like a development ladder. Like, I don't know if that's the right way to frame it, but it's kind of like once you have access to energy, you're able to do a lot more for your community and able to do a lot more with your life. And it's kind of like, I think ensuring people access to energy is the most useful thing that we can do basically to help people, to bring people out of poverty. That's the long rambling version of, I traveled a lot through climbing, saw a lot of things. And it's kind of like, I think energy access is the issue that matters the most and can have the biggest impact environmentally. And solar is generally the best solution to that. And so we've been supporting solar ever since.
That's amazing. That's awesome. So that's how it started. How's it going?
Well, now it's going a lot better. When I started the Honnold Foundation, I was giving like 1/3 of my income a year, just a couple small grants. This year, the last couple of years, we've been donating $2 million in grants to organizations around the world. And so, that's obviously a lot more than I was ever able to give myself. And so it's amazing. We're just having a much bigger impact and a bigger platform, hopefully doing more good.
So that's got $2 million a year in grant donations. What's the target?
Yeah, I suspect next year we might be able to do more because actually this has been a good year for fundraising. And so in theory, we'll have more to give next year.
Good. Yeah, we've been excited to be part of it the whole way through, and it's nice to see the growth and our involvement together.
It's funny that the growth is really inspiring. Still like the tiniest drop in the bucket in terms of global need. And when you look at global energy access issues and just even the just transition to renewables and all that, you're kind of like, man, so much money could go into this. Particularly if you wanted to make it all happen faster, which I think would be very helpful for the environment. Just to like get the world off fossil fuels as quickly as possible. So anyway, it's like, it feels good that the Honnold Foundation is sort of contributing a little bit where it can, but you're kind of like, man, in the grand scheme of things, this is just the tiniest little drop.
Totally. You're so right. When I first started in the solar industry in 2005 or whatever, it was like, we were scratching at these little, 6 kilowatt residential systems and just, early days. And from my lens, 20 years later, like we're actually a big part of the energy mix in the country now, which is exciting. But I agree with you. It's still the first inning, if you will.
Totally.
It's still the first inning.
The first? I feel like for solar, you don't think even the second?
I think it's like maybe I'll go one out in the top of the second inning.
Okay.
How's that? If we're a baseball analogy?
Yeah, if we're doing baseball, I'm kind of like, I feel like it's more than the first. Come on.
I don't know.
The solar's been growing exponentially. It's, prices have dropped. It's like cheapest power in the world in some places.
It is.
So you're kind of like, I feel like that's past the first inning, I hope.
Okay, I'll go top of the second, one out.
Okay, well, that's something. It's something.
Still early days, though. Still early days. In terms of Honnold Foundation, grants growing. One of the things I've learned from you and from hanging out with Honnold Foundation people, Emily among others. For the record, this is a wonderful foundation. You have such a great team, Peter and Emily and your whole crew, who I've hung with quite a bit over the last couple of years. Such a great team. You should be proud to have assembled a great cast. But one of the things I always hear is, the foundation has a lot of what we say in the solar industry, shovel-ready projects. You have this long list of shovel-ready projects ready to go. And as we've talked about before, you don't want to airdrop solutions on them. You don't want to tell them what they need, but you've actually already spent the time to get in there, understand them, understand their needs a bit more, and have these projects ready to go in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, really, we solicit grant applications, so anybody around the world can just send in their good ideas. And sadly, we're only able to fund a small fraction of them, which means that we fund the very best ideas, and often the ideas that have multiple order benefits for their community. Things where it's like they're using solar for energy access, but it also does other things like, job training or whatever, environmental protection or sometimes conservation projects, whatever. But it means that there are all these other projects that we aren't able to fund. And I think right now it's something like a $50 million pipeline or something. And like it's amazing, but you're also like, that's too much and we just can't. And even if you discarded half those, because the ones that we can't fund, we don't do the full vetting. And so, like, if we really went into the details on all those and made sure the projects work technically and that they make sense, maybe it's only half that are really viable. But that's still a $25 million pipeline. You're kind of like, oh, geez. And we're not even, we're just issuing an open call for whoever applies. It's not like we're really trying to find the best projects. It's like there's such demand out there in the world. I mean, there's such opportunity. And this, I mean, if I'm allowed to just get on my soapbox and preach, I feel like there's so many big, philanthropists, like big tech people, whatever. Think like, I was like, should I say names? Who listens to this? Like, it's like, like the Bezos Earth Fund, let's say, that's like committed billions of dollars to climate. And you're kind of like, oh, that's cool. But like, when do you actually give the money to people to do the things that they need to do? You know what I mean? Like, to me, I feel like these types of projects, the projects that the Honnold Foundation is funding, are the most useful, the most on the ground. It's like helping the people who are most affected by climate change and helping them in a way that's good for the environment, good for them. And it's like them helping themselves. It's like, community organizations coming up with projects that they think will have the biggest impact for their community. You're kind of like, let people help themselves. I'm kind of like, why are not more of these projects being funded? There's a lot of like big bet philanthropy with like, we're going to develop fusion. And I'm kind of like, I'm all for developing nuclear fusion. Like in the future, that could be amazing. But the thing is, the reality is that right now, there are literally hundreds of millions of people on Earth that don't have access to power who could easily benefit from very cheap solar systems. And you're kind of like, why not start with the low hanging fruit? Like start with the projects that are simple and deployable right now. Is that a word? Yeah. But like, that you can solve, anyway, this is my rant.
No, I love it. I'm on the same page. I mean,
it's like, do we need to send rockets to Mars? And I'm all into that. I love science. I love general development and like all the kind of futuristic sci-fi kinds of things. I'm like, that is great. But I just feel like you start with the simple solutions to real human problems right now.
My own experience, just sort of dealing with philanthropy generally, which is new to me, is I had this really cool river trip this summer on the main Salmon River with a bunch of billionaires that I got sucked into through a different organization, which was really entertaining and really eye-opening to me, because these people all are really dedicated environmentally and they want to give big dollars towards environmental causes. But there was a lot of campfire and, 2 beers around the campfire chat about how to best do what you're saying. How do you actually tactically get that money to the people that need it or want it, or that has a tangible impact, instead of just throwing it into some bucket in some ethereal world of like, I'm a big donor, but, for me, it's, some of the people I heard from on that trip are the Walton Foundation, Lucas Walton, and I think it's called Builders First. But there are, as you know, probably better than I, there's a bunch of big donors out there, big philanthropy folks.
I did this philanthropy event at Goldman Sachs recently, which I was like, oh, there's a lot of money in this room, and like it's all family foundations and stuff, and it was interesting because And this is something I was like, guys, what? But I heard a bunch of folks at the sort of conference talking about how it seemed to be this prevalent idea that when you have a lot of money, you have this big responsibility to use it in the best way. And I felt like it was people letting perfect be the enemy of good, where they're kind of like, well, you have to do this correctly. And I'm like, no, you have to do it at all. You know what I mean? Like if you have that much money, and to me, it seems like if you have $1 billion, you can afford to lose more of it in stuff that, like you can be a little bit looser in your philanthropy because you're kind of like, yeah, if you lose some, who freaking cares? Like you make more in interest than you lost in trying this idea that didn't pan out. And so, to me, I'm kind of like, when you have a tremendous amount of money, you should be even looser with it. Like you should be giving to things faster and like more easily and like trying more things and just not stressing it. And yet weirdly, and sort of counterintuitively, it seemed like the richer that some people were, the more they kind of clung to it. Like I have to do this properly because I have this big responsibility because I have so much money. And you're like, that's not a big responsibility. That's a gift. Like you can have this tremendous positive impact on the world. Just start, just do it, And I don't know. I mean, I think that's the one thing that I may be sort of proud of with the Honnold Foundation is that, at least I started. And it's like, we're not having that big an impact. It's not that much money. I mean, we're doing the best we can with what we have, but compared to like big money donors, it's trivial. But I'm like, at least we're doing it. It's like, at least we started and at least we're giving money to the right people and like people that benefit the most.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. It's weird. That is a weird vibe.
I was like, I couldn't stand hearing rich people be like, it's just such a challenge having this much money because you just have to manage it so well. And I'm like, what? Like, no, that means that everything,
just give it away.
Yeah, give it away. Like, if it's such a challenge, give it all away. Like, what's the big deal? Like, it's not going to change your quality of life. Like, your kids are still going to private school. Who cares? Yeah, but how do we do it? It's so hard. And you're like, it's not that hard. Give it away. Like,
I'll take $5 million. How about $10 million over here? Yeah, it's a weird.
But I do think that when you have that much money, you're often disconnected from the community organization. And I think that's where an organization like the Honnold Foundation comes in, is kind of being an intermediary between the small scale. Because some of these grassroots organizations, the people that we're supporting around the world, we're giving grants of sometimes as low as 25 grand, sometimes up to 150 or 200K, let's say. And those small amounts of money can be transformative for a community. And for communities that have never had access to power, 150K can light the whole village. And it's like, that is a big deal for people that have never had lights before.
Totally.
And yet, if you're an organization, if you're some big donor trying to give billions to climate, you're kind of like, how do you get connected to these organizations that realistically can only handle 150K at a time? Because they're like so small in the middle of nowhere in the jungle or something. It's like, some of these organizations, and that's where intermediary funding, I think, can play a useful role.
Got it.
Like, because you just kind of need those personal connections, whereas like at a certain level, you need to know a guy that knows a guy who's doing the thing and then pay for him to buy the materials and actually do the physical thing. And that's like sometimes so small scale that, you need help getting there.
Yeah. I'm often reminded in my own life, being there is half the battle, just face to face instead of the internet and all the communication devices we have these days. Sometimes just being there makes a lot of difference for sure.
Totally.
So back to HF for a second, $2 million budget this next year. Hopefully we'll grow it to more.
Hopefully 3 this year. We'll see.
3, maybe better. And you've touched all the big donors and there's lots of fundraising going on with a $50 million pipeline, maybe whittle it to 25. I guess the question is, how do we help Honnold Foundation raise more money?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about philanthropy, really. We just go out and ask and try to do the work and do the best we can. I mean, it's a challenge. I don't know. And the thing that I think is weird about fundraising is that realistically, you could meet one person, one individual could just cover our entire pipeline of projects and just fund all of it. The right person. And the right person wouldn't even notice. It would just be a rounding error in their overall philanthropy. Mm-hmm. Or we can hustle tons of different people, tons of different things, and sort of round up the money as well. And it's just hard to know what the correct strategy is. You can round up corporations, you can, things like REC helping us out. But realistically, it takes a lot of that to build up to, match this pipeline that we have.
I don't know it that well either. So I'm learning on the go. And Peter, who works for you, is in the thick of it as one of the fundraising guys. And I told him when we were talking the other day, I'm like, man, you have a hard job. It is not easy to be you and just constantly ask for money. It's basically hustle, right? It's not easily done. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we'll see if we can get there. But I think the point I'm trying to make here is that HF, the Honnold Foundation, has lots of projects ready to go, just awaiting funding, which a lot of other nonprofits I don't think can say. These are actually tactical projects. We've looked at the little sort of one-pagers on each project. They're vetted and ready to go. So that's a huge advantage I think HF has.
Yeah. Maybe I've actually never really thought about that. I don't really know how other organizations run, but it is true that the HF could easily double its budget next year, and all of that would go straight to projects because we already have the team we need. We already have vetted projects. Like basically, like it's all there. It's like, and we could handle. I mean, I suppose if the budget tripled or quadrupled, then maybe we'd have to hire another person to help manage all the extra grants and everything. But not really, at a certain point, like we've developed the team, we've developed the infrastructure, like we know how to vet the projects well, we know how to manage it all. And now really it's just a matter of putting more money into projects, which is a nice position to be in when you're kind of like, okay, we know what we're doing it well. Now let's just do it bigger. Yeah.
Honnold's doing some great work and really exciting times. Excited to be alongside you for the ride, see where it goes. And it'll be another adventure next year. Final question, Alex. What would you say if you go back to your 20-something self living in your van, either on El Portal Road or wherever you...
Yeah, outside Yosemite.
where you were. People who are younger, who are motivated by environmental issues and causes, who are trying to get involved, who maybe don't have the means to do it. Maybe they're still living in their car. Maybe they're up on the wall right now. Maybe they're doing whatever. Like, what would you tell young people about how to get involved, either with HF or just generally speaking with the environmental movement in this country?
I think in general, I tell people to find the thing that they're interested in, passionate about, and do it to some extent, like find a way to help, do a thing. I think if you really care about the environment, I mean, if nothing else, there's always political organizing or political, anything. Like there's always something useful to be done. Or you can also look at your own life and sort of minimize your own footprint how you can, and like do all the sort of personal action things. And it's like realistically, all the personal actions probably aren't going to change the world, but they're a good place to start. And I mean, I kind of did a lot of that too. I sort of looked at my own footprint and was like, what can I be doing differently? What can I be doing better? How can I have a real impact? And then sort of build up from there. So I don't know. I feel like if you're a passionate individual, there's certainly a lot of places you can start, either with your own life or with your skills. Like what can you do to help broader movements? Whatever things you're passionate about.
Yep. That's great. That's great.
I would say the most important thing is just to do something. You know what I mean? Like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good kind of thing. Like, don't be paralyzed by this, like not knowing the perfect thing to do, not knowing the absolute correct thing, not, wondering if it's enough to make a difference or not. You're kind of like, who cares? Like, do something. It's like, yeah, maybe it won't change the world because you're one of 9 billion people, but it can still do something, and it's better to be doing something than not doing anything.
Alex, thanks for the sesh this morning. I'm looking forward to you kicking my ass on the climbing wall here in a little bit, and I'm looking forward to kicking your ass at table tennis again.
We'll see. I think I'm going to pull it together
in an hour.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, pleasure.
Good sesh.
Yeah, thanks.